Vessel of Hatred is finally coming out, and so much about the game is changing. One of the biggest changes is what we're going to be talking about today, which is the way that you progress your character through the game. In this video, we're going to talk about the leveling process and the most efficient leveling strategies, but then we're also going to talk about what to actually do once you hit level 60, which is the new level cap. The game is so much more complicated now that you have a lot more options for what to farm, and there's so many new types of content. And this guide that I've written is based on feedback I've gotten from people who are in the creator beta, as well as based on my own experience playing the game in general. And overall, this seems to be the best strategy from going from a fresh character to being as strong as possible, as fast as possible. Now, there will be some things that will change on the launch. Certain forms of content will get rebalanced and stuff. And, maybe for your specific build, the exact method is slightly different. Maybe at some point it's better to level a glyph than it is to farm something else. But overall, this strategy I'm going to lay out today will work for every build in every class. And it's going to be like 95% accurate for the best way to progress your character. When you first make your character, the most efficient way to level is actually going to be through the campaign. The reason for this is because not only is the campaign actually pretty good XP, but it's also going to be gating a lot of in-game content, so you need to do the campaign at some point, so you might as well do it while leveling. And like I said, it ends up actually being pretty decent XP. However, there's a caveat here. So the way the XP works in the campaign is that it doesn't actually seem to scale with difficulty, so it's actually best to level on normal difficulty. The other thing is that because the quest XP from the campaign scales with your actual level, you want to get your first 20 levels or so from Helltide rather than from the campaign, so that you can, the first quest, immediately you start getting tons of XP from the campaign rather than just getting a little bit of XP at the lower levels. So you want to start in Helltide, but you don't want to over level because you want to try to line it up so that you finish the campaign right as you're hitting level 60, ideally. You really don't want to be stuck in the campaign when you're already 60, and you don't want to be finishing the campaign at like 55 because it's an XP loss. So ideally you get, for me personally, the best method that I saw was to get to level 20 and then do the campaign right at level 20. And then you want to do your class quest as soon as you unlock it as well for the increased power, and you should be able to blast through. Now, if you finish the campaign and you're only like level 58, what I heard was that the last couple of levels, the best thing to do is to do strongholds, because you'll get roughly 1 level per stronghold. So if you're level 58, you just knock out 2 strongholds real quick and you're level 60. You could also just jump into Helltides or whatever, but strongholds are technically the best way if you don't hit it from the campaign. So once you're done with the campaign, you're going to have unlocked access to the whole game, and you're going to get access to the new Torment difficulties. So the new Torment difficulties, if you aren't entirely familiar, are basically replacing all content scaling in the game. No more Nightmare levels, no more Horde levels. Everything is now tied to Torment. And the way that you unlock Torment levels is through pits. So right when you hit level 60, you want to go straight to the pits right away. Don't do anything else. Go straight to the pit and put yourself into Torment 1. So I think you have to do like a pit 20, I believe it is, and then you're going to unlock access to Torment 1, which will give you access to ancestral items. If you can, go straight to Torment 2, but for some builds and some players, you're going to have to farm Torment 1 for a bit, but ideally go straight to Torment 2. Now, regardless of which Torment you want to start in, the best thing to do right off the bat is to level glyphs. The reason for this is because, glyphs now have, at level 15, they still get the increased radius, but they also get an increased radius again at 46. But that level 15 power-up is huge. You're not going to be able to turn on most glyphs anymore without getting them to level 15. So we need to get the glyphs to 15 so that we can get those damage multipliers going. And it's a guaranteed payoff, plus the pits themselves are going to be giving us a lot of legendaries per hour, which we're going to need aspects still. On top of that, we're also going to be getting obols from these pits, which obols actually have really good rates for rolling for unique items. So whatever uniques you need for your build, you can spend the obols to roll for those, and then you can level your glyphs up to 15. It's really powerful. Now, at the very start, you're actually going to be very low Paragon level, and you're going to have to figure out how to get that up. Now, one of the best forms of XP in the game is Infernal Hordes, but there's been some changes to Infernal Hordes. You can no longer craft these keys. Instead, you're going to get them randomly while doing Nightmare Dungeons or Helltides. So as a general rule, especially in the early end game, like when you first get 60, until you're like, Paragon 225 or 250 or so, you're going to want to do every Infernal Horde that you get for the Paragon XP. So get your glyphs to 15 and then do hordes whenever they drop. Now, once you get your glyphs to 15, you're going to be looking to swap to Nightmare Dungeons. This is because Nightmare Dungeons are not only going to give you masterworking materials now, which are really useful, obviously, for getting character power, but you're also going to be getting boss mats for summoning bosses. Summoning bosses has always been very important for getting your uniques and rolling for uber uniques and all that, but it's even more important in Vessel of Hatred because they're going to give you tributes. Tributes are used to open up a new form of content, which is called the Undercity, and the Undercity is the best thing in the game to farm. It gives you the most amount of reward per hour, and it gives you a huge variety of rewards as well, which ends up putting it really far ahead of any other content. But these tributes are very rare and they're hard to get. And it seems like, from what I heard, the only way to get them is from bossing. You might be wondering, why are we doing nightmare dungeons to farm for boss mats? Well, actually, nightmare dungeons drop an insane amount of boss materials now, which is pretty sweet. And you can use those boss mats to summon the bosses, and then you get tributes. And actually, you can get boss mats from tributes, so you can summon more bosses to get new tributes. And that's kind of the infinite loop you're looking to do. This is very hard to pull off in Torments 1 through 3 because you get so few boss mats from the tributes, but once you get to World Tier 4, this loop works a lot cleaner. So in World Tiers 1 through 3, we're going to be doing a lot more Nightmare Dungeons than we will in the later stage of the game, and this is going to allow us to funnel all of our activities. Now, with regards to masterworking in Torments 1 through 3, ideally, you shouldn't really be upgrading gear past Masterwork level 4 because the cost to upgrade it becomes so high. But if you have a really good piece, like especially if it's like an Ancestral, or even like a perfectly rolled normal Legendary, like if you have a necklace with like a passive that's really good for you, don't be afraid to upgrade it higher. But in general, try to keep your items around 4 out of 12, and then worry about spending your materials later once you have better items to upgrade. One other thing I want to mention is the seasonal mechanic. So the seasonal mechanic is like a timed event similar to Legion events, but they happen more frequently. And when you do it, you get access to consumables, which increase the number of items that mobs drop. You can either get extra gold, extra legendaries. There's a few things that you can get, but the main one you're going to want to run is extra boss materials. Now, from what I heard, it was not worth it to stop to do the event, but I just wanted to put that in here that, you know, maybe they buff the drop rates of these items, maybe it's more worth it. And if that's the case, you'll definitely want to do all of your farming with the elixir that makes mobs drop more boss materials so that we can get more tributes, more uber uniques, etc. Now, once you get your glyphs to 15 and you're doing your infernal hordes, you get a lot of paragon levels, you get materials, you get all your uniques and stuff, and your build really starts to come online, you're going to be looking towards Torment 4, which is currently going to be the hardest difficulty in the game. And getting from Torment 3 to 4, by the way, just so you guys know, is a huge grind. From what I heard, it's like 10 to 15 hours of like blasting to get from Torment 3 to 4. So this is a big step. So everything I just described for Torments 1 through 3 is going to be a huge chunk of what you're doing in the end game. But I think it's interesting to look at Torment 4 already and start thinking about, you know, what is actually going to be efficient in Torment 4. So the first thing you want to do, as soon as you're able to, you want to get your glyphs to 46. This will unlock the second multiplier on your glyphs, which will be about like 50% more damage across all 5 of your glyphs, which is a really big deal. So definitely you're going to be looking to do that. And remember, you need to do pits to upgrade glyphs now. And ideally, the pit levels you'll farm will be 20 higher than the current glyphs so that you can get 2 ranks. So basically, at the end of a pit run, you get to upgrade a specific glyph, similar to Old Nightmare system. But if you're at least 20 pit levels ahead of what your glyph level is, you get 2 ranks per upgrade. And if you're 30 ranks ahead, you get 3 upgrades. So you try to keep that in mind when choosing your farming. It's generally not going to be worth it to only do 1 glyph level per run. It's much better if you can do this grind, getting at least 2 glyph levels per run. Now, the second thing you're going to want to do in Torment 4 is you're going to want to farm Nightmare Dungeons. And in this case, you're farming them mostly for the masterworking materials. Now, the boss materials you get are also very high value, of course, but we're going to be looking for masterworking materials once we're in Torment 4, so we can start upgrading our gear to significantly increase our character power. At this point, you should have a few Ancestrals once you're in Torment 4 power level, and you're going to want to be upgrading those and getting the correct tempers and fixing your items, and this is going to be a core piece of that. Once you get like a decent gear going and you're really able to farm Torment 4, once you get your glyphs up and all this stuff, we're going to be looking to engage into the boss ladder and tribute loop, which is what we described before, where you kill bosses, they drop tributes, you use tributes to get boss mats, and then you kill bosses to get more tributes, right? So then we're going to go straight into this loop and start blasting. That loop is going to be the primary farming loop that you're going to be doing in the end game. Now, you will need to weave in some Nightmare Dungeons whenever you need masterworking materials. Maybe you do the occasional horde for gold or some XP. And then also you might run the occasional Citadel, which is the raid, to reset your tempering on an item. If you didn't know, from the raid you can get an item that resets your temperings. But other than that, your main gameplay loop will be tributes and bosses. So that's pretty much what the gameplay loops are going to be looking like. This is what's going to be the most efficient, like how to start from like nothing and become a beast. And this is based on my conversations with loads and loads of people who've played through the beta. So yeah, hopefully you find this useful. This is the strategy I'm going to be going with, and let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for watching. See you next one. Peace out.